So it took me a long time to find my end game setup in squash. Like, seriously, take a look at this picture from all the way back in 2017. Like, this is a sliver of what actually went on. For me, this string does everything right. And I mean everything. That combination of the responsive, buttery softness combined with that grippy, textured coating it has, it's just mwah. Now, I'm the kind of person for whom it takes forever to find the perfect setup because everything just has to be perfect. But when I do, I tend to stick with it. But I've become a better player over time, and as that has happened, especially after investing into a bit of coaching, I figured it's a good time to take a look at making a small change to my setup. What, you thought I was going to make a drastic change in my setup after all that experimenting? Come on. Okay, before we move on though, I want to make a quick mention of my own biases, which is that I tend to prefer super soft string setups that are strung at pretty low tensions and ones that give me a pretty pronounced trampoline effect off the string bed. The question is, why is that? Well, there's two reasons. One is that I learned to play over the course of many years with one racket, right? I never broke the strings and I kept playing with them. And you can imagine what the string tension was by the time I actually cut out the strings. Pretty loose. So I just ended up, getting used to that feeling. And now I just prefer that trampoline effect, and anything else just feels wrong. I mean, the trigger for me to finally cut those strings out was a friend of mine trying my racket and just giving me the filthiest look in the world. As if I had just offended the entire squash community by stringing or letting my tensions go that low. Yeah, needless to say, I ended up having to listen to a lecture in between every single game we played. And when I finally did get my racket restrung, I regretted it the minute I hit a ball with that freshly strung string bed. It was just awful. So tight. Ugh. Oh, if you're curious, the tension I prefer to play at is 20 pounds. The second reason is that my favorite player of all time, Gregory Gaultier, Le General, plays at a disgusting, ridiculous 15 pounds of tension, and yet somehow manages to hit the cleanest lines I've ever seen anyone hit on a squash court, maybe except Shabana. And at the end of the day, what budding squash player doesn't want to emulate his favorite player, right? Come on, you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so remember what I said about the SuperNick XL Micro? That combination of the responsive, buttery softness combined with that grippy, textured coating it has, it's just mwah. Well, let me expand on that just a little bit. Now, this is a responsive string. What that means is that when the ball hits the string bed, you really get to feel the ball and the string interacting with each other. Now, usually this is in the form of vibrations that you feel come through to the racket and into your hand and arm. And most people generally will describe it as a racket having feel. Now, I personally love this feeling, right? But it's not for everyone because these vibrations can get a little bit too harsh for some people. The amazing thing about this string is that it tends to dampen all of what I would call harsh vibrations, letting only the good ones come through. So you get this amazing responsiveness where you get to feel exactly where the ball is on the string bed, but it's without any harshness or any discomfort. It's just a pleasant feeling. I think this is mostly down to the fact that this is a multi-filament string instead of being a monofilament. And a multi-filament is basically, instead of being one single strand of plastic, these are hundreds of microfibers that are kind of woven together and bound together to form one single strand of squash string. And because they are like not one material, they're hundreds of different strings, they tend to be a bit more forgiving, be a bit softer. And this is why that responsiveness that I'm talking about is so pleasant. It's just soft. It's largely down to those hundreds of microfibers kind of working in conjunction together, but still kind of leaving enough play in between each other to dampen out any of the harsh vibrations. It's a very pleasant feeling. Well, I just came across this random river. Kind of pretty. Not a bad trail to walk on. Now, what brings all of this together is a pretty textured outer nylon layer. For me, this is the cherry on top. Like one of the ways I got better as a player is by spending hours on court trying to cut the ball as much as possible into the nick or put like lots of bite on my shots so they either spun into the wall or into the nick or in a direction that I wanted to go to. And this textured layer just gives you that extra bite and spin to make your shots just that teensy bit more effective. It's really wonderful. Once you learn how to make use of this textured layer, it's kind of hard to go back. Okay, so you're watching this and you're saying, well, this all sounds amazing. Why change? Part of me becoming a better player has meant being more consistent on court. That doesn't mean hitting shots with more power or more speed or being faster on court. It's just meant being more consistent and doing all of this with better technique. What I've come to realize is that being more consistent also means being more consistent with your equipment. So while the SuperNick XL Micro works for me, and it has worked for me very well for many, many years, it does lose tension steadily. Like, I find I get used to this gradual tension loss pretty quickly. But the reality is, my lines and my shots on the court are not as tight as I would want them to be. So there's this narrow range of 19 to 21 pounds where I tend to feel at one with both my racket, and it shows on the court. And this is exactly where the SuperNick ZX Micro shines. After an initial tension drop, it seems to hold tension remarkably well. And I know that because there is this crispness to my string bed when I freshly get it strung that kind of disappears after a while, but with the ZX, I never get the feeling that it goes away. And I'm not blowing out of my ass. I have measured this with a string tension meter. Yeah, it seems to hold pretty well, and the fact that a lot of pro players tend to play with the string as well is, I think, good evidence for that. The amazing thing is that SuperNick ZX does all of this without compromising on what I love about SuperNick XL. If I'm being super nitpicky, I would say that the ZX is just a little bit stiffer and a little bit deader feeling than the XL, but it's you know, I'm splitting hairs. I myself have gotten used to this so quickly that, I barely perceive this difference when I go back and forth between the two. I also feel that I gained this added extra mental advantage knowing that my equipment is on point. Like, if something is not going well for me on the court, like, the onus is on me, right? Like, I blame myself and focus on taking the actions that I need to take to right the ship. I mean, I don't know, there's a lot of negative self-talk that can happen during a match inside your head, and one less negative voice probably is a good thing. There's a book by this tennis player called Brad Gilbert who played in the 80s, I believe. It's called Winning Ugly. He makes a fantastic case for this in chapter 2, I believe. Seriously, if you haven't read that book, just go buy it. It's worth a read, and anyone who's competitive at anything at any level should give that book a read. It's not just about sports, it's kind of life philosophy, I feel. Now, I don't want to give the wrong impression here. I'm not sensitive to tension loss. Like I said, my body gets used to this tension loss pretty quickly. What actually gives me far more grief is the difference in tension between sessions when a restring happens, because that delta in tensions is just so sharp. Now, ZX kind of helps with this, right? Because if the tension maintenance is pretty good, then the delta is going to be a bit lower. Now, I also think the obvious answer to this conundrum is to restring more frequently, right? Which I have committed to after getting a restringing or a stringing machine. But the fact that ZX holds tension that much better probably helps. Like, this manifests itself on the court in a bunch of ways. My mistakes tend to be good. My mishits tend to be better. They tend to go my way a bit more. And I don't think it's because of the string. It's just because you are more confident, because you are confident in your equipment. I don't know, maybe you're not that kind of player, but I have found over time that consistency is something I prize quite a lot, especially after reading Winning Ugly. So what's the takeaway here? Well, if you play with either the XL or the ZX and you're happy with it, well, by all means, keep playing with it. Remember, for us average Joes, it's not our equipment that holds us back, but it's our own technique and lack of skill. So focusing on that will give you far better return on your time than anything else. But if the journey I've shared resonates with you and you find yourself in a similar position, I hope this helps you get your end game setup just that much faster. And I hope you don't have to spend as much time on it as I did, or as much effort. All the best.